Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going beyond basic film criticism to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole Finari, and with me today is...
Stacy Moore.
And what movie are we overanalyzing this week?
Empire of Light.
Directed by Sam Mendes, Hillary, played by Olivia Colman, is a cinema manager struggling with her mental health, and Stephen, played by Michael Ward, is a new employee longing to escape the provincial town where he faces daily adversity. Together, they find a sense of belonging and experience the healing power of music, cinema, and community. What did you think?
Well, full disclosure, I feel like watching American Beauty in the theaters in 1998 or 9, whichever it was, basically was my coming of age, I think.
Okay.
I think before that film, I watched movies like a child, and after that film, I watched them like an adult.
Okay.
So I have a special place in my heart for Sam Mendes and the way he tells stories and sees people. Mm-hmm. So I came into this wanting to like it, ready to like it. And, and I did. Overall, I did.
Okay. It was a mixed bag. I really didn't like the first half, but I did like the second half a lot.
What did you find different about those?
I just didn't like the love story. And we'll get into that. But, like... it just didn't come off for me, and I thought it was problematic, and I didn't enjoy it. And then once she was back, and then she and he were just friends, I was like, I like this a lot better. So yeah. To the Sam Mendes, and I thought it was so beautifully crafted, and he always uses Richard Deakins as his DP, and like every shot was just like so beautifully crafted. Like it was just really amazing. I think my favorite was their New Year's Eve on the roof, where you just see the outline of him against the fireworks and like perfect depth of field. And I was like,
it's just gorgeous. Every frame that guy Mendes directs is just beautiful. He has a way of seeing the universe, I feel like, that is the most, to me, feels the most real. Mm-hmm. In a way that just like a handheld kind of grainy documentary camera doesn't. Like, that ultra realism isn't actually real. I feel like Sam Mendes sees and reproduces images the way the human heart and eye see the world.
Yeah, I can see that. I thought it was such a just deep pleasure to sit in a movie and just see the beauty and the craftsmanship of it all. And so it's like I can't hate it too much for that aspect. I did also like I loved the lighting, like the warm, the sort of honey glow of her apartment before she has her manic episode or psychotic episode. And just the warm glow that surrounds, the empire, the entire movie.
Yeah.
And you can just see the, like, what's the word? The color temperature shift from, like, warm to, like, a bluer, colder light whenever they go outside, or, again, when she's in her space and her mental illness is starting to creep back in. And I just was like, there was just this, like, sense of deep comfort from the lighting, from the color palette that they chose, like the interiors were all these sort of saturated but somewhat muted, like blues and reds and just yellows and like these very like 80s comfort colors. And it absolutely felt like being wrapped in like a warm, cozy blanket.
Oh, it's the best. It's the best. I'm glad you mentioned the difference between, the interior and exterior shots. Like when they were outside, frequently you would get those sort of wide, those panoramic shots of what is the British seaside.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this British seaside tourist town with like the sea and the seagulls, and then they'd go back inside and it would be, like you said, this like golden...
I know one British seaside town, so that was pretty funny because they're like, well, it's not like we're Brighton. And I'm like, then I don't know where this is. Like,
absolutely. I was like, no, this is Brighton.
I was
it's
like,
Brighton.
It's Brighton, right? Like, I was like, I don't know, the one seaside town, that was it. But
it's gotta be.
It was Margate, if that means anything to anybody. Okay. Yeah, it meant nothing to me. I was just sort of like, I just thought it was funny. I was like, I only know the only, like,
I assumed it was
town.
Brighton until they said that, yeah. That's so true. But yeah, gorgeous. I loved, I will say he's super on the nose. Like, he's not very subtle about his visual themes.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't mind that. I feel like it's more important to communicate a theme than to hide one, and so that only the smartest, most astute observers, you know, pick up on it. So, like, I noticed that he kept using... he kept recreating a celluloid film strip within a scene. So there were lots of light spaces marked off by black squares.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. So I know he did it mostly with like doors, sets of doors. Like when she's in the hospital, she looks like she's in a frame in a film strip, or like they did it with the doors of the theater itself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when the protesters were going by, and I saw it over and over again. Like, he's like, life is like film.
Yeah.
Or at least this is how he makes sense of it. You know, it's how he makes sense of our lives is through watching these films.
Yeah, I mean, the whole opening scene is her turning on the lights of the theater, which is very on the nose. Like,
yeah.
But you're like, that's okay. Like, not, yeah, right. My issues with the film were about, not that it was too on the nose, just like was a bit muddled about like what it was trying to be about in certain places. Mm-hmm. So we'll get into that. But like, yeah, I'm with you. Like, not everything has to be this like sort of subtle. There's room for all types, and it just, if it's going to be on the nose, it has to just be done well. And really, I guess I would say if you're going to do something on the nose, you have to carry it through. Like every element, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, or don't do it at all. Sure. Or it's going to look really clunky.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like he's pretty consistent. Yeah? Or no?
Yeah. I mean, again, I just like, it was, you know, we've had this rant on the podcast before. I was out with some friends, and Justin, the other host, had people, and we were just talking about like how dark everything is, and I was like,
sure.
Who sits around in their house and doesn't turn a freaking lamp on? Like, you know, I was like, you don't even know they're good actors. You can't see what their face is doing. Like,
right.
Like, I was just like, it was like such a pleasure to be in a space where I was like, I can see everybody in this movie all the time. Like,
you're supposed to see what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And just like the incredible darkness is just, it's gotten really old, and it's gotten really, again, like
it's overused.
It's not even just as overused. Like, it's a problematic approach because you can't see
it. Yeah. I think I only recall to your point about the lighting earlier, you know, depicting their states of mind. I think the only time it does get dark in a room is when she is losing it. Like, she's breaking down in front of Stephen. And it's that very harsh, I think there's a very harsh light pointed up at her. God bless her. That was, you know, we say very brave, right?
Yeah.
Under, you know, lit from below like that. And then everything else around her is very dark, and she's just breaking down. It's, let's talk about the cast.
Yes.
Let's talk about the cast.
Yeah. Go for it.
First off, the role of Stephen. What did you say his name was?
I believe it's Michael
Ward. I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what a find. Where did he come from? And in every scene, not every scene, but in many scenes, I feel like he exuded, at least Sam Mendes made him look as though he exuded like that old school Hollywood, like the golden era of Hollywood charm.
Yeah.
Like that suaveness, that like class, for lack of a better word. So that he looked like Gene Kelly, I feel like they put him in a fedora a lot, and at any point there was a point where he was walking through a park, and I'm like, he's gonna like swing around that lamppost and like, you know, pot a bouret away. He at least, he just had that thing that the old Hollywood actors have. At least it's how it came off in this film anyway. And then, of course, Olivia Colman. Dang. Like...
Yeah, I mean...
just shredding in every scene.
But yeah, I think... And he had that, like, he just emanated such a, like, a warmth. And a depth with, doing very little often. Yes. Brilliant turn by Olivia Colman. Sort of expected no less.
Sure.
I'm a secret fan of Toby Jones as well.
Oh, brilliant.
And it was one of those, like, very English things where he's in the movie a lot. He has very little dialogue for sort of an actor of his quote-unquote stature. But just absolutely brings so much to every word that does come out of his mouth. But the entire, like, down to the ensemble...
like the other ushers.
Yeah, the, like, weird, like, aviator usher... Like, when he sticks up for Olivia, I was like, or for Hillary, the character, I was bawling. I was like, Colin Firth, good for him.
Colin Firth. Some of the lines that man uttered in that film.
I know.
Where I was like, no, I'm not sure anyone else could have pulled that off.
It was like, and it was one of those things, too, I was just thinking, like, good for him for even taking this role. Like, why would you even want to play this role? But, like, he's just been, like, the nice guy for so long. It was nice to see him play this, like, really...
Just nasty.
Yeah. And just those scenes... Again, there's so much of the writing that I didn't care for.
Okay.
But those, like, awkward negotiations... Where she was like, I'm doing this, but, like... I will give you a hand job, but I will not give you a blow job, Just,
so difficult, but so real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I never thought I could be repulsed by Colin Firth, but, they pulled it off. They achieved it.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. Their interactions were so real.
Yeah.
And that's something else I think Sam Mendes does really well, is he gets people.
Mm-hmm.
And all of their... He shows them in the positions and the interactions that before American Beauty almost never got depicted.
Yeah.
Except in maybe, like, your most obscure art film.
Right. Yeah, I just... I mean, everybody was just absolutely pitch perfect, yeah. So you just no complaints.
Tell me about the writing, though.
Although, I would say, too, like, one more thing of, like...
Yeah.
I was thinking, as you know I do, sort of towards the end of the year when all these Oscar baiting movies are out, I'm like, okay, well, we have a second nominee for Best Animal Actor of the Year, the pigeon. We got the horse in Nope. We got the pigeon in
That's right.
So for newer fans, or if you've missed those episodes, the one, like, Oscar category I personally want to add is, like, Best Animal Actor, and I was like, yeah, make all the trainers come out with. I was like, wouldn't the Oscars just be improved if we had, like, puppies and horses and pigeons? Like,
it can't hurt.
Yeah, very effective faking, being injured and then flying away. Well done by that pigeon.
Yeah, that was an example of, like, something that could have been a metaphor quite on the nose if you were hoping for something more subtle. There's genuinely, like, a pigeon where he says, "Oh, he's hurt. He just needs some help." And they bandage up this poor injured pigeon, and then he flies away. And in the moment, you're like, oh, that's Steven. That bird is Steven.
Yeah.
And right after they had been saying how the theater had been discussing whether or not the theater had seen her best days or if she was coming into, like, her best days. And I'm like, okay, Hillary's the theater. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess my problem, I don't know. So... what did you think of their romance?
I think, oh gosh. It's tough because he is, I don't even think I realized at the beginning of the film how young that character is. He is just out of school, I think. Like, just out of high school even. Yeah. Like, he says that his friends have all gone off to college. Right. So we know that, or we can gather from that he is a legal adult who can do as he pleases. And so I kind of was like, well, I guess, if people have free will and if that's what they want to do, then who am I? to judge them on, and that's just on whether or not the relationship was problematic. On the other hand, she is mentally ill. So she probably, none of the decisions she's making are quite sound, right, at this point. So we can, there's that to sort of consider. Whether or not they had chemistry, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed like a weird thing for him to do with this older woman. Like, yeah. And then there was just the aspect of, to me, it was like a statement of, especially like coming off of She Said, like this sort of, so first of all, there have been a lot of May-December movies featuring women around, and it's become sort of like the new, like, commonly accepted thing in movies. It's like to have a much older woman and a younger man. And to the extent that, you want to gender flip and what that all means, and you're like, it seems quite creepy when a man does it, but is it okay when a woman does it? Like, I guess I felt like the statement was sort of, men her own age are the worst. So, like, the only hope is to, like, for the next generation kind of thing. And I was like, I don't love that as a statement. And it was hard not to compare it to our very, very first episode ever, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Which I recently rewatched.
My name is Doris.
Hello, my name is Doris. And in that, it's all the same plot other than the guy is, first of all, much older.
Yes.
Although Sally Fielder's also older than Olivia Colman. But he doesn't return her romantic interest, only platonic interest. Right. So you go through all the same beats and notes of her having to, like, have this, like, awakening and this sort of, late life coming of age movie without actually having it be two-sided. And I thought that worked a lot better because, like, I just, like, why would Steven have sex with this woman?
It was hard to say, yeah, and they certainly play it like he's into it. He's super, super into it. He's super into her. And I was never quite sure where that attraction was coming from for him. It's quite obvious where the attraction is for her, right? Like, this guy is gorgeous. He's sweet and kind, and
I mean, I felt it.
Right? Yeah. Like not hard to she didn't have to dig deep. That,
I mean, he's stunningly good looking.
Right.
And like you said, incredibly suave in a very, like, fetching old fashioned way.
Right, yeah. And
I wouldn't have kicked him out of bed for eating crisps.
Okay. And no knock on Olivia Colman, she's lovely. But yeah, just wondering why a young man would date someone that much older at that point in his life. Perhaps there was something hinted about, like, his father disappearing, and, maybe he wanted somebody to accept him. Maybe he wanted to, like, make someone accept him. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about that either.
Yeah, and it's just, like, for me, it just, like, it didn't work. And then, she stops taking her lithium, and you're like...
Here comes the train wreck.
Yeah, because, like, you're not prescribed... Like lithium's, like, it's not prescribed for, like, mild cases of different disorders, as it were. You're like, yeah, here comes the thing, which you probably didn't notice this, but another thing that has been quite frequently has been in all the movies lately. I was like, oh look, and now we're cutting to Teaser and the Fire Cat when she's having her whole manic scene. The Cat Stevens album, Teaser and the Fire Cat, is playing. So The Wind is playing. And I was like, oh my God, how many movies have I heard The Wind in the background? Like, that's suddenly, like, the it song to play in the background. And then it finishes quite stunningly on her complete breakdown where the social services come in on Morning Has Broken.
Oh, gosh.
Which is an incredible song. But I was just sort of like, man, The Wind is... That song by Cat Stevens is having its moment in film for the past couple of years. So... Yeah, I also thought, I don't know how I feel about how her sort of, I'm going to say manic.
We're not doctors.
We're not doctors, manic, psychotic. I'm not sure. Yeah. Seemed manic to me. Mm-hmm. How her manic episode played out and like what we were meant to take from that. What were your thoughts?
Well, she did seem to have a history of abuse. Right. From various quarters. Yes. Various parties. And you never know, like there's some research out there that argues that a lot of the psychological disorders that are diagnosed are actually just untreated trauma, and it's usually with women. Bipolar disorder is one of them. Like women get diagnosed with bipolar disorder all the time, and it turns out no, they were just abused, and like nobody said anything and nobody treated them. So it could be something like that, where she's just a woman who has been through a lot and hasn't had the capacity or the tools or the resources to cope with it. And that just led to this. Like she just went off the rails.
Yeah, and I guess to me, I'm not aware of that research, so I'll say that up front. But to me, I was like, you're sort of conflating the abuse and the mental illness, and I don't think that's fair on either side, right? Like, it's for sure. I mean, I don't know if the statistic still holds true, but I remember my mom once told me, like, professional psychologist, like, 100% of people who have what they're now calling DID, dissociative, multiple personality disorder, were abused as children. Like, it's most a coping mechanism. Yeah. Right, so then you have the portion of the trauma. You have to have the predisposition and you have to have the trauma. You have to have both. And that's fine. But yeah, I felt like they were sort of conflating the mental illness with the abuse a little bit. And you're like, like she's obviously, yeah, lithium has really, can have really problematic side effects. And so I was glad in the second half, like again, they just seemed to be hitting a pitch that I was not comfortable with. In the second half, they kind of brought it back and you're like, okay, she's got treatment. She's in a better place. Like, this seems good. Let's not pretend that like mental illness is, if only, it's like, it's a real thing. It's a real problem and people can be helped. And if they stick to treatment, they can be helped. And I didn't want the message to be that this man made her crazy, like kind of thing.
Which man?
Well, Colin Firth, her manager,
right,
basically
drove her off the deep end.
Yeah, I mean, I guess rape is a fair term to use there. Like, the sex had, again, he was her boss. There was no possibility of consent. So anyway, yeah, and I thought she did that scene really well. I was a little bit annoyed with the lipstick on the teeth, but not as annoyed with the, like, her dress not fully done up in the back. Did you catch that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, it was like not fully zipped up.
Dang.
So like they have a shot of her and you're like, it's like a little bit open where she like couldn't reach or whatever. Dang. And I was like, I mean, sometimes we get lipstick on our teeth. It happens when you wear adopted lipstick. We're not crazy. Like, I was like, that is a signifier of like, now I'm having a manic episode. I was like, it happens. Like, it's kind of hard to avoid depending on how your mouth is shaped.
Yeah. I did wonder if also he was, like, the film was trying to say that the world is mentally ill at the same time. Like, what hope do we have of coping when, the entire society is crazy, for lack of a better word?
So, yeah, I took the theme, like, what I came away with as a theme at the end of the day was that I found it very beautiful and inspiring. It was that, movies are a way to escape and a way to create community, right? Like, you kind of have all these misfit people, and the only thing that binds them together is, their love of the movies. But that can only do so much, right?
Oh, yeah.
The real world, you cannot use it to completely block out the real world. It doesn't help when there are Nazis, like, and skinheads and sexual harassment. Like, it can only take you so far.
It's a balm, but it's not a cure.
Right. Right. The real world will intrude. You can't block it out. Escapism isn't the answer. Like,
oh, that's tough.
And I thought that was like a really, really beautiful message, and obviously one that's going to resonate with me. Like, here we all were, like, in the theaters going to see a movie, and have we not, created our own community around movies? Like, I think it's come up before, but, a sort of process note for new audience members. We go see the movies independently. So I have no idea. When I say to Stacy or whomever, like, what did you think of this movie? I have no idea. We haven't talked about it. Mm-hmm. But I will go see a movie with Stacy when someone else is doing the episode with me. And, like, you will see a movie, like, we did AwesomeCon together. We hang out outside of this podcast. And a lot of us were complete strangers before they sort of got into the Movies That Matter fold.
Yeah. But we're movie people.
We're movie people. And that's what ties us together. And we always will have that in common. And we've created our own community with this podcast.
Yeah. So when I was 16, when I turned 16, I probably mentioned this to you, I got my first job at a little struggling 3-screen cinema in my little suburb. And I went to interview for the job. And the guy that managed, a picture like anyone from a Kevin Smith movie, basically.
Yep. I got it.
Right. He's the manager. He's interviewing me, and he's like, and he kind of looked like, oh God, I hate my life. Let me get through this call or this interview. And he says, so why would you like to work here? And I said, well, I'm here pretty much every weekend, so I figure I should start getting paid for it. And he sat up and looked at me, and his face changed, and he's like, oh, so you like movies? And the way he said it, I was 16. I didn't know that there were movie people and everyone else. I was like, what do you mean? Of course I like movies. Who doesn't like movies? And I now understand he was saying, like, oh, you're a movie people. Mm-hmm. Now you're part of this community.
Right.
And I never forgot that. And it's so true. It's so true. I teared up when she is watching her first film, Being There, starring Peter Sellers.
Yes. Shades of Cinema Paradiso, too, if you've ever seen that one. Yeah. So I actually have a note. Being There? ? I've never seen it. I sort of know what it was about, but do you have any thoughts about why he picked that movie or what the significance of Being There is?
I might. I did go back and watch it for the first time.
Okay.
I said to myself, I need to, Sam Mendes just put this film up as Hillary's first film in a theater. This is important, right? So I went back and watched it. He is a character, so Peter Sellers, who is one of the greatest film performers of all time. So great choice.
I mean, literally one of the funniest people who's ever lived.
Sure. Yeah. Just at the top.
And can do all the things, but still, superlatively funny.
Yes. His character watches TV constantly. And doesn't really know how to cope with the outside world. But manages to by incorporating basically everything that he has seen in these television programs. So it is, I think that could have been...
Is he like a modern day Don Quixote?
Yeah, okay, yes. Yes, I would say so.
Okay.
That's a great simile there. But he, so he is constantly ingesting what he sees on the screen.
So it's a character who's also using escapism, but confusing it with his own reality, which they don't.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I just like, again, it made me want to go back and watch Cinema Paradiso. Also Chariots of Fire, because I love Chariots of Fire. And I was sitting there, I was like, well, now I want to watch Chariots of Fire.
Yes, another gem, right? All the scenes with Toby Jones, like
yeah,
he's his working when he's working with the different projectors and all the pieces as you would, like as a surgeon would, or a concert pianist. It's beautiful to watch. They really sell that. It's just so beautiful to watch that
yeah. And then there's like a Steven says something like, you go just to like sit in the dark but be surrounded by people but no one can see you, and it's like you're having this like intimate experience at the same time that you're sharing it with other people, and you get that combination of being in the world but being separate from it as well. And I just thought, again, very on the nose, like you said, but I thought, here I am at this movie. There's 3 other people here. It was barely playing in any theaters. And, of course, it's a very self-interested message for somebody who makes movies to try to sell you on the idea that you need to go to the movies. But to me, it kind of brought up some of the things that, some of the fears and concerns that I've had recently about like where we're headed with this sort of most people going full-time or almost full-time remote. And I know this sounds like super judgmental and very almost like, I don't know, paternalistic, maybe not the word I'm looking for, but like thinking that I know better than other people. But I think I know better than other people, and I think everyone's making a mistake.
Watching movies remotely?
All of it. I think everybody thinks like, wouldn't life be perfect if I never left the house and never had to talk to anybody who wasn't like living here in this house with me? And I'm like, no, it wouldn't be perfect. You're going to get very depressed, and this is a very bad idea. Like, we already have an epidemic of like like you've read all the same New York Times think pieces I have on isolation, the so-called deaths of despair, the epidemic of loneliness. And I'm like, we are making ourselves more lonely. And everyone I know is like, no, work from home is great. Like, I never have to see anybody. And I'm like, I know you think that's a good thing. And I know, like, in every individual instant, it might feel like a good thing. But overall, it is a really bad thing.
Okay, so I agree and disagree, right? I agree that community is essential. Uh-huh. You have to have community. You have to have in-person community in order to be a healthy, happy person. Yes. Right? It is so ingrained into how we're designed as animals. Mm-hmm. And also spiritually. You need community. I do think that before the pandemic, the only community we were getting was our office, and that is wrong. Yes. That is incorrect. Right? Like, that is not where people need to be going to look for community is to a corporate environment. Right. So yeah. So yes and no.
Okay.
That. Yeah.
No, I'll take that on. Like, I was thinking about that. Like, I'm like, you are somebody who works fully remote now, right? Like, and you have in the past, but you make sure that you still get out of the house and see people and go to movies and do things, like, right. And that's fine. I think people sort of, well, I guess the concern I have, one, is like people think that they will do those things, and you're like, it gets hard. It gets hard if you're not very intentional about it. For a lot of people, and I put myself in this camp, so maybe I'm overgeneralizing to other people. Once you're home all day, the thought of leaving the house gets harder, not easier. Because you're like, oh, now I have to like put on real pants. And for some of us, possibly abroad, you're like, leave the house and there's going to be weather out there. And like, it's easier just to stay at home since I've been at home all day, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's what happened to me when I was in grad school, and I got very isolated because the work from home just started to seep into the whole rest of my life, where like I just got too comfortable, like never leaving the house. So I'm not saying that's true for everyone. And I think,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a city, we have all these connections, we have our own community to build, but I'm sort of just generally worried about people. I agree that, like, work shouldn't be your only sense of community, but now if it was, like, now we're losing that. And that's scary to me.
I won't miss that. I will not unequivocally do not miss that.
Yeah.
I will not miss that. However, I do think the film was longing for a previous time when people went out for the evening and saw other people. So the theater, the Empire, has it had a dance hall with a grand piano,
right,
and tables for people to sit and mingle. So it going to the movies, at least in this seaside tourist, weekend away town, was an event, and you got dressed up. You got dressed up. You went to the movies. They were like all day long too. There was like 6 hours. You like 2 double features and then cartoons, newsreels. Yes,
it was a day
for sure. And then you would get champagne and a meal maybe, and dance to the guy playing the baby grand. Like that was I did feel the loss of that in the film.
Yeah.
And the film takes place at a very specific time and place, right? It was Maggie Thatcher's Britain.
80s Britain. Yeah.
Right. And where I have heard that time mentioned as kind of the first era where people in Britain were noticing that the former sort of cultural institutions were falling away. That the things that used to hold communities together were falling away, and everything was becoming much more consumerist and capitalist and individualistic. So I don't think that's an accident. I think it was a specific choice.
Oh, I think it was a very specific choice, and I thought it was a good mirror to the current times, right? Where you now have had, well, you've had a lot of prime ministers. But let's just pick on Boris Johnson for like, you have, this nationalistic trend again in Britain. You have Brexit. You have, a lot of political and civil unrest happening again. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because I'm certainly not an expert on English politics. And definitely for our own experiences as Americans, like, you see all that, this is a very, very difficult time in America. And, we are vastly approaching the 2-year anniversary of a flat out, like, coup. Yeah, I mean, again, it was obviously a movie that was pretty much preaching to the choir. But I did definitely feel like the case for going to the movies, for having that A, cinematic, and B, communal experience, and for the community that movies brings together, just hit. I was very emotional by the end of the movie, and I was just like, look at the community that we've created through this podcast. Like, look at, and we're like, we start this in 2017, 2016.
Yeah, pre-pandemic. I don't mind saying that, like, finding, watching movies, from being a young woman, even a child, we all watch movies as children, but then coming up in age and throughout my life, I don't mind saying how important, and I do mean important, having that escape was to my survival. And so I do sort of that this film did resonate with me on a very basic level. But I think you're right. It can't be just an escape. It can't just be the hole you crawl into.
Right.
To not have to deal with the world. I think maybe for someone in a bad situation with no out, great, yeah, crawl into that hole and don't come out until the coast is clear. But as an adult with responsibilities to yourself and others, yeah, you have to take what take the strength you get from that community, and then, like you say, face the world, which is what Stephen does, right? Like he probably wants. I'm sure Stephen was tempted to stay at that theater and just tear tickets,
right,
for the rest of his life and not have to go out and face what was a hostile environment for him. Mm-hmm. But he did. He did.
Yeah, and at one point, they're talking about some of the racist problems that are going on at the time, and he's like, I need you to read a newspaper, right? And like, so I thought, there was a very pointed message of like, you can use movies as the escapism that they are, but it does not let you off the hook from recognizing what's going on around you, and that you owe it to your community to look out for your members. Like, again, I thought it was very pointed how the one usher who then becomes the manager, when she's like, you've been sexually harassing me at work or sexually assaulting me at work, and he's like, yeah, that happened. He immediately just takes her side and speaks up in the moment. And, Stephen says, you need to read a paper. Like, you need to know what's going on. Like, it not just that the real world is intruding, like, you owe it to your community to know what their concerns and what their issues and what's going on in, for them in the larger societal space. And I thought that part was pretty effective, actually, as a message. Again, it wasn't subtle, and that's fine. I thought it was necessary to say, movies can only get you so far. You still owe it to everybody to, like, read a freaking newspaper and not bury your head in the sand about, what life is like for immigrants or minorities or whomever.
Right. And I, not to fold this sort of analysis in on itself too many times, but what are the movie makers, the storytellers' responsibilities towards that as well? Like, you've got, and then the two examples I'm thinking of are Toby Jones, you're Toby Jones, the cinematographer. Yeah. Not cinematographer, sorry, the projectionist. Thank you. The projectionist, in one of his, amazing scenes, reveals that he has a son that he hasn't talked to since that son was like 9. Yeah. Or something. Mm-hmm. He neglected his family. Mm-hmm. His paternal responsibilities he neglected and threw himself into his work. And his work is beautiful, and that does bring value to the community. But also he neglected his family responsibilities. Mm-hmm. So what is it, from the artist's point of view, or, their responsibility to their family, their community, but then also their product. Right. Chariots of Fire. Beautiful film that dives into anti-Semitism. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Religious oppression. Being there gets into white privilege. So those are both examples of films that they actually said something. Yeah. And I feel like Sam Mendes always tries to say something. I thought he was trying to also say that the movies themselves need to not look away from those things, from those problems as well. Yeah. No, Yeah. And there's a place for pure escapism, and then there's a place for, like, she said, yeah, go see it. Yeah. Right. Nobody else did. You should. Yeah. All right. So, final thoughts? Are you ready to give a social impact score on this one? I would love to give this a 4, a social impact score of 4. I haven't heard anyone talking about it. No, it's all going to come down to if there's Oscar buzz. You know what? That's true. And I know we can't sort of put a pin in our scores. Yeah, I think I have to just give it an even 5, because I did like the second half so much. And like I said, it was just a joy to just watch a really well-crafted movie. Like, it was just so nice to see. Yeah. It was a delight. Such care and craft. I just feel like Sam Mendes, like, he sees the beauty in human frailty and just puts that out there for us to, it's a superpower.
All right, so recommendations for the week.
I would like to recommend, okay, so I don't know if, dear listener, I don't know if you're one of those people who continues to celebrate the holidays after the holidays. I am one of those people. There is a tradition of celebrating the full, as a Christian, celebrating the full 12 days of Christmas. Also, it helps with post-holiday blues, so I recommend that. But if you are one of those people and you want to keep watching holiday movies, I recommend going back into the vaults. For the first time, I saw It Happened on Fifth Avenue. And another one called The Bishop's Wife, starring David Niven and Cary Grant. Yeah. Looking fabulous.
Oh, Cary.
Oh, just serving old Hollywood charm.
Yeah.
Like Steven.
Like no one could, yeah.
And they are fun. I laughed unironically at the jokes. They're just a delight.
So I am going to recommend, I've been taking a lot of long drives lately, and one of the things I like to do on long drives is listen to long-form podcasts. I've been listening to this podcast from New York Times called Cover Story. Their first season is on the use of psychedelics in unsanctioned and sanctioned therapy. What a ride. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this podcast. Check us out on all the places. All the places are basically Facebook and YouTube at this point. Check us out on our website, moviesthatmatterpodcast.com. And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.